Likely we will have to drop something, but I haven't decided yet what that will be. It might be A Wrinkle in Time, which is the third next book that we should be reading. We should do The Hobbit next. Then Lewis's Till We Have Faces, then A Wrinkle in Time. Might be A Wrinkle in Time that we drop, or it might be the last book on the syllabus. I just, like I said, haven't decided yet. Okay, so where we left off, or I think where I said I wanted to pick up, was somewhere around 85 or 86. Possibly 87, because that's where I've got a paper clip. And where I really want to get is, it's on 85 where he describes, lying in the corner of a hall. He's found like a castle. And he's lying in the leaves there. And he sees all these people come in. But then he notices they're not really people, or they were people. They're what appear to be dead people, because all he sees are skulls on their faces. Okay? And they come in and they do this big dance. And I'll pick up on, I guess, the top of 86. Take that back. Very bottom of 85. Of these, talking about the people that he sees, some flesh set and white and murderous. Others were clouded with decay, broken and gapped, colored of the earth in which they seemed so long to have lain. Fearfuller yet, the eye sockets were not empty. In each was a lidless living eye. In those wrecks of faces glowed or flashed or sparkled eyes of every color, shape, and expression. The beautiful, proud eye, dark and lustrous, condescending to whatever it rested on, was the more terrible. The lovely, languishing eye, the more repulsive, while the dim, sad eyes, less at variance with their setting, were sad exceedingly, blah, 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 blah. So he gets up. He sees this. He gets up and he starts walking among them. Okay? Here he describes them as apparitions. He's trying to understand something of their being, he said. What are they? And he realizes they're completely unaware of him. In the middle of that page, 86, surely they saw their companions as I saw them. That is, as they're dancing, surely one of these skeletal creatures holding another one sees it as a skeleton. Or was each only dreaming itself and the rest? Did they know each how they appeared to the others, a death with living eyes? Had they used their faces, not for communication, not to utter thought and feeling, not to share existence with their neighbors, but to appear what they wished to appear and conceal what they were? Think about that sentence. Had they used their faces not to appear what they were, but how they wished others to see them? What's he trying to say? And I say trying to say because I don't think he's saying it especially well. Because he's bringing up an idea that C.S. Lewis is then going to follow or expand upon in the novel Till We Have Faces. Okay? Notice the title of that novel. Because MacDonald says here, again, had they used their faces, okay? The things that you can't help but show other people, right? No matter what you do, you meet somebody else, they see your face, unless you wear a veil. Okay? And they use their faces, one, not for communication, to express something of what is inside, to reach out to somebody else. Okay? Two, not to utter thought and feeling. How can a face utter thought and feeling?
Facial expression.
Facial expression. Words come out of the face, right? They come out of the mouth. So words on this very basic level, facial expression, it's why, email is not good to communicate something really important. Okay? Because you don't get what? You don't get intonation, you don't get facial expression, you don't get all those little subtle cues that communicate meaning. Okay? Not to utter thought and feeling, not to, and here I think he kind of sums up what he means by communication and uttering thought and feeling. Not to share existence with their neighbors. Not to essentially say, I exist, you exist, we exist together. Let's try to understand, this place we inhabit. But to appear what they, verb, wished to appear. To be seen how they desired or wished or wanted to be seen. And conceal what they were. See, all too often, I think MacDonald's point is, what do we do when we come, proverbially, face to face with somebody else? Okay, make assumptions. What else? That's doing something about the other person. We portray ourselves a certain way. In other words, I'll use myself as an example. When I walk into here, as opposed to walking in my living room, what do I put on that I don't put on necessarily in my living room? Professor hat. Or, another way of putting it, Professor Mask. When you walk into here, as opposed to hanging out with your friends, your family, you put on, whether you are consciously aware of it or not, student mask, student appearance. Okay? Everybody does this, is his point. We can't help but doing this. But he's trying to say, we should try to not do this. We should try to appear, what? As we really are. Okay? And having made their faces, next word, masks. Masks. See, masks you can take on and off. So you can make your face to appear one way to one person, one way to another person. Every political candidate does this, right? Because what do? They speak to this group, and they put on one mask. They speak to this group, and put on a different mask. They speak to this group, and put on yet a different mask. Why? Because this group and this group might be diametrically opposed, and yet that political candidate is trying to reach out to both groups. That candidate knows, I cannot speak to this group the same way I would speak to this group. I cannot use the same language. I cannot talk about the same topics, etc. So, he says, and having made their faces masks, were they therefore deprived of those masks and condemned to go without faces until they repented? In other words, these people that he's seeing lived all their lives how? Masks. They never revealed the real I. Now, he's suggesting, is this the case? Now they're dead, and therefore they have to go without the masks until they what? Repent. Until they repent, and he doesn't state it. But what will happen as a result of repentance?
Their true self will come.
Bingo. Their real faces will appear. Okay? The true self will be seen. How long must they flaunt their facelessness in faceless eyes? He wonders. How long will the frightful punishment endure? have they at length begun to, and this is what he means by repentance, have they at length begun to love and be wise? In other words, what will come as a result of loving? Not sexually, okay, but loving an other person. They will be wise. Have they yet yielded to the shame that has found them? That is, the shame that he sees them, how? Without faces. Well, have they looked in the mirror? He's kind of saying, no. Why? Because they're still faceless. They will be faceless until what? Repentance, which involves loving the other, but what else does it involve? Hamlet says, I don't know if any of you saw the production of Hamlet, did the extra credit thing. Hamlet says the purpose of playing, acting, is what? To hold a mirror up to nature. For what purpose? To show people how they really are. He says it is to show the mirror of scorn to folly, to foolishness. To do what? Is it merely to tear down the fool, the person who does stupid, idiotic things? No. The purpose of satire is to do what? Turn the fool from his or her ways, to make the fool wise, to make the fool realize, well, I'm a damn fool. I should stop doing this. Okay? What is the purpose of Alec Baldwin doing Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live, which I've never seen?
To show the fool he's a fool.
Okay. It's to portray him as a fool. Is it merely to tear him down? Well, I would argue, if it's Saturday Night Live, yes, it is. It's not real satire anymore. Okay? But Saturday Night Live 20 years ago, its purpose was what? Show Trump to stop acting this way. That's it. Or whoever they skewer. Whoever the, politician du jour is. Okay? So, he keeps watching this, and in comes a woman. Next page. Perfect in form, in holding, and in hue. Form, great body. Holding, how she stands, how she holds herself, and in hue, her coloration. Regarding the company as from the pedestal of a goddess. That is, she looks at the company how? As from the pedestal of a goddess. He doesn't mean she literally walks in and climbs up on a pedestal. What's she doing?
Looking down.
She's looking down at everybody. At the little people. Okay? While the dancer stood like one forbid, frozen to a new death by the vision of a life that killed. And she speaks to them, and they turn to each other and start dancing again. Okay? And he notices she has a shadow on her side and presses her hands to it. Okay? And then flees. He then leaves the hall and he sees. Sorry, I've got a very bad sore throat, so I've got to drink a lot of water. He sees a couple, an older man and a younger woman. Not an old man and young woman. Older, younger, okay? And notice, they see each other how? As skeletons. Okay? This is page 89. He says, "Bless my soul, madam, are you out on your bones?" She says, "I have nothing else to be out in." You can't complain. What does it mean? Am I dreaming? Is this real? He says, you can be dreaming, but no, I'm not. Why? Why does he say he's not dreaming? This knee of mine forbids me the grateful illusion. Hurts like hell. in other words. And if I were dreaming, I wouldn't be in this pain. So he says, I trust to goodness these are not my bones. Everyone aches worse than another, and this loose knee worst of all. The bed must have been damp, and I too drunk to know it. Okay? So he's kind of implying, maybe I am dreaming, and maybe I went to bed in a wet or damp bed, and I woke up with my knee sore, kind of a thing. And she calls him, or says, probably, my Lord of Cockaigne. Okay, that is a family name from the Middle Ages forward, but it also means, the word comes from Middle English and means idle dreamer. Idle. Idle there means fruitless, to no purpose. Okay? It's also an imaginary paradise. Well, they aren't in an imaginary paradise right now. Because I would think if it would be paradise, he wouldn't be in pain. So they keep talking. He doesn't remember his name, and she doesn't remember her name. Why not? Just as Mr. Vane is going to be called several times in the novel, what's your name again? And he's like, don't remember. Why don't they know their names? They don't know who they are. Why don't they know who they are? Because they've been wearing masks all their lives. Okay? So, he asks for help from her. She gives him help, and then he goes to hit her. She moves. His leg falls apart again, and she stays backed away. Okay? So notice, in their present state, how much are they, quote-unquote, loving each other?
Tough love.
Tough love? Possibly. I mean, she does try to help him, right? How does he respond? Not in like manner. Okay? So, they continue talking, and we find out they were married. Page 91. He says, we used to get on pretty well together, eh? You know, we used to have some fun, right? Not that I remember, my lord. The only happy moments I had in your company were scattered over the first week of our marriage. Wow, that's not good to hear. Was that the way of it? Well, it's over now. In other words, thank goodness we're no longer married. I wish I could believe it. Why were we sitting there in that carriage together? He says, I think we were divorced. No, we were still together. We are still together, she says. Okay? He says, I can't think of a compliment to pay you. Without lying, that is. Okay? If he's lying, then what's he not doing? Revealing his true self. Okay? To judge by your figure and complexion, you've lived hard since I saw you last. Well, her figure is what? Bones. Okay? Complexion. Bone. I beg your pardon, madam. Excuse me, back up. You've lived hard since I saw you last. I cannot surely be quite so naked as your ladyship. In other words, surely I'm not as bad as you are. I beg your pardon, madam. I trust you will take it. I am but jesting in a dream. It is of no consequence. That is, whatever, wherever we are, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a dream. Dreaming or waking, all's one. All merest appearance. Okay. MacDonald's writing this in 1895. By 1895, some Eastern religious thought had already permeated England, Great Britain, and one of those thoughts is this idea that everything is an illusion. This life that we experience right now is merely an illusion. We saw this to great effect in a series of films done about 15 years ago? What's the first one? The Matrix. That's a different kind of illusion than Eastern religious thought taught. Okay? We are merely what? In the Matrix.
Batteries.
Okay, yeah, we're battery. But what we're experiencing here is like a program. This is a Star Trekian holodeck, essentially. Nothing is really real. Okay. I once heard a tape of a philosopher / theologian, this was back in the 60s, who was talking to a group of students at Oxford. Okay. He'd been invited to their rooms for tea and such, and he had a student who said, but Mr. Schaefer, I don't believe anything that we see, anything that we experience is real. We are all merely an illusion. There is no such thing as real human life. And about that moment, the tea kettle on the hot plate started to whistle because the water is boiling. And he goes and he reaches for the tea kettle and he takes it off the hot plate and he says, so if this is all an illusion, you won't mind if I pour this on you. And he starts to get ready to pour it in the guy's crotch. And the guy jumps back. No! And he goes, if it's an illusion, what does it matter? If pain, in other words, isn't real, then why does it matter at all? Why do we shy away from it? Because there's something up here that says, you know what? Pain is real. It's like the line in one of the greatest films of all time, Princess Bride. Life is pain, Highness. Okay? So, he's saying none of this is real. None of this is important. She says, life has taught me what? That I was a fool to love you. He says, you weren't the only one. Lots of fools loved me. She says, I did love you, my Lord, a little at one time. And when she says that, MacDonald is taking the voice, if you saw it again, of Ophelia from Hamlet. Because Ophelia says that exact same thing. And he goes on and says, well, that was your mistake. You should have loved me much, loved me devotedly, loved me savagely, loved me eternally. What is he not aware of that we become aware of by the time we finish this book? She did love him eternally, right? How do you know? Because they're still together. And are they alive here? No, they're dead, right? What is happening to them? They're on those couches, right? They're quote-unquote sleeping. And what's happening? They are dreaming, kind of. But what is happening in those dreams? This is their purifying. The dreams are their purgation of what? The masks. The masks have got to be burned off until the true self is revealed. Okay? He goes on. It says, then, that is, if you had done those things, I should have tired of you the sooner and not hated you much afterward. But let bygones be bygones. Where are we? Well, Mr. Vane has asked that a couple of times. One time he's told you're in the region of the seventh dimensions. Where the hell is that? Another time he's told you can't know where you are until you know who you are. Well, who am I? You don't know that either, do you? Until we get to the end, kind of. So he then says, to be or not to be is not the question. Again, Hamlet. She says, we're in the other world. He says, yeah, but which? Or what sort of other world? This can't be hell. It must. There's marriage in it. She says, you and I are damned in each other. Why are they damned in each other? Go back to what is real repentance? Loving. What didn't they do? Alive. So now they have to. All right. George Bernard Shaw late 19th, early 20th century playwright, said, hell is doing what you want to do for all eternity. Doing what you want to do for all eternity. Okay? So he goes on and talks about Othello and stuff. He asks for the stick. She says no. And Mr. Vane starts thinking about all this again. Page 93. What can come of it, I said to myself. These are too wretched for any world. And this cannot be hell, for the little ones are in it. Right? Describe the little ones. Little small children. Do they have any guile to them? Any falsity? Any wrongness? No. They're like perfect beings, except they won't grow up. Okay? And the sleepers too, that is the people on the couches. What can it all mean? Can things ever come right for skeletons? And he hears a voice. And the voice says, you are not in hell, neither am I in hell. But those skeletons, they are in hell. And he sees the raven. And the raven goes on and says, the male was never a gentleman. And in the bony stage of retrogression, with the skeleton through his skin, his character outside his manners, does not look like one. In other words, how he appears now is how he really was in life. He was a monster. Okay? He was horrible. The female is less vulgar and has a little heart. How do you know? She tried to help him. But the restraints of society removed, you see them now just as they are and always were. What will become of them? We'll see. Page 94 at the top. In their day, they were the handsomest couple at court. And now, even in their dry bones, they seem to regard their former repute as an inalienable possession. Their former reputation. What is reputation based upon?
People's perception.
People's perceptions of you. What is that perception based upon? How you present yourself. The masks you wear. Okay? So he says, to see their faces, however, may yet do something for them. They themselves, rich too, while they had pockets, but they have already begun to feel rather pinched. My lord used to regard my lady as a worthless encumbrance, for he was tired of her beauty and spent her money. Now he needs her to cobble his joints for him. These changes have roots of hope in them. Why? He needs her. Okay? Besides, they cannot now get far away from each other. They see none else of their kind. What must they learn to do? Love each other. To reach out to the other person. They must at last grow weary of their mutual repugnance and begin to love one another. For love, not hate, is deepest in what love, capital love, loved into being. What does he mean? What love loved into being? Creation. That's what he means. When God created. Okay? So, Mr. Vane says, I saw others of their kind not an hour ago. He says, you saw others of their kind, but not of their sort. For many years, these two, will see none such as you saw last night. Why? Because the ones that you saw in the castle, they're way ahead of them. He says they are centuries in advance. You saw that those could even dress themselves a little. It is true they cannot yet retain their clothes as long as they would, only at present for a part of the night. But they are pretty steadily growing more capable and will, by and by, develop faces. And their faces will be what? Expressions of their true selves. Because notice, they're starting to put on fragments of clothing. All right? For every grain of truthfulness adds a fiber to the show of their humanity. Nothing but truth can appear. They're upheld by hope, he says. But they don't understand their hope. Okay? So, Mr. Raven tells Mr. Vane, did you come to find me? He says, no, I have no anxiety about you. Such as you always come back to us. So, who am such as I? I can't make my friend the subject of conversation. In other words, I can't talk about you. Why? Because that would be like you being a third person in the conversation. That's just weird. But what about when that friend asks you? Then I can't. Why? Because he and I would be talking of two persons, as if they were one and the same. Your consciousness of yourself and my knowledge of you are far apart. Right? What I know about myself and what each of you knows about me, very different things. But there's another distinction. Who is Mr. Raven? Adam. And we're given to know Adam has a much clearer understanding of each individual than the individual does himself. So, Adam says, in this world, never trust a person who has once deceived you. Never do anything such a one may ask you to do. He goes, I'll try to remember that. But I might forget. Well, if you do forget, some evil that is good for you will follow. And if I remember, some evil that is not good for you will not follow. Okay? So, he goes on. And let's see here. He sees the, what do you want to call her? Dead woman, the mostly dead woman, right? And what does he do to her? Not, anything weird. He picks her up, he bathes her in the water, cleans her off kind of, and he starts to give her the little grapes, okay, that he got from the little ones. And he nurses her back to life, right? Until she's able to, unaware to him, suck his blood. Who is this? It's Lilith, okay? So I'm going to skip a bunch. The white leech. She finally wakes. He talks to her. He says, I did this because you're of my kind. She goes, surely not of your kind. How is she not of his kind? Okay, she's a vampire. She's not human. He is what? Son of Adam. She's not. She's equal to Adam in her mind. Actually, she's superior to Adam in her mind, but she was made of the same dirt that Adam was made of. Okay? So she disappears. And he goes on to Bulika. I'm skipping a whole bunch. Runs into the woman with Bulika, the white leopardess. He kind of helps save the little baby. He sees the princess again, or the woman. And page 128, he wonders, right in the middle of the page, could such beauty as I saw and such wickedness as I suspected, exist in the same person? Why does he even ask that? Because we have this idea kind of ingrained into us. It's almost like it's part of our DNA. That beauty equals goodness. And ugliness equals wickedness. She's beautiful. And yet he's thinking, but she's also wicked? How can that be? Right? Plato, 2,500 years ago, essentially argues this. If beauty and wickedness can exist in the same person, how is it possible? And he doesn't know how to figure that out. Right? So he starts to talk to her. She talks about the lovers she's had. He notices page 134 On her left hand, she wears a glove, a large, clumsy glove. And he thinks in his mind's eye he sees hair and claws under it. Why? What does he think she is? What does he know she is? The spotted leopard. Okay? We see the battle royal between the white leopard and the spotted leopard. I'm going to skip a bunch again. Pick up with 140. He wakes up and he's back in Scotland. He's back at his own home and he's lying in or near his fountain. And Mr. Raven says something to him and he says, Vane says, you told me nothing. I told you to do nothing. Anyone you distrusted asked you. Well, what did he do that he shouldn't have done? He climbed the tree. What did he not know she was doing? Climbing behind him. So that when he got to the top of the tree, what happened? She was holding on to him. Okay? You will not forget the consequences of having forgotten it, says Mr. Raven. Pulls him out. Vane, what does it all mean? In other words, explain, please. A good question. Nobody knows what anything is. A man can learn only what a thing means. Notice that. Nobody knows what anything is. Only what it means. What is it? What? No one can know what a thing is. What this thing's essence is. He says you can only know what it means. So what does this mean? What is its meaning? It's an eraser, right? It's not its isness, according to Mr. Raven. Its isness is something unknown to us. We can see its purpose, but not the underlying idea behind it. Okay? So he goes on. Whether he do, that is, knows what a thing means, depends on the use he is making of it. Because what if you used this to try to write on the board? Well, that would be moronic, right? It's not what its meaning is. So, you've got to understand its purpose. He goes on. Depends on the use he's making of it. Mr. Vane, I have made no use of anything yet. I've not, in this whole other place, I've not done anything, he says. Okay? Well, not much, but you know the fact. That is, you've made a little step, a little progress. Because you understand, you haven't done anything useful. That's something. Most people take more than a lifetime to learn that they have learned nothing and done less. Why do they take more than a lifetime? Think of a couple in the wood. They are learning what? That they didn't learn anything while alive. The couples in the castle, they've learned a little bit more than that. So he says, at least you have not been without the desire to be of use. That is, at least you've tried, you've thought, right? Because they start talking about the little ones. And what did Mr. Vane think while he was with the little ones? How? Okay, before then. When he first arrives, what does he notice about them? It's really obvious. They're all small. What do they need to do? They need to grow. Okay? He realizes that. He thinks about giving them knowledge. What does he know they are without? Water. Water. And he thinks, maybe they need water. Does he know where water is? Yes, he does. He slept on the ground and he's heard the gurgling of the springs. Does he ever once think about getting a shovel and digging a well? No, he doesn't. Okay? Why not? They've got the grapes. They've got the little fruits off the plant. They're getting nourishment that way. It's not the same as water, however. Right? He says, I wanted to do something for the children, the precious little. He goes, I know you did. And you started the wrong way. I don't know the right way. I said, that's true. But you're to blame that you did not. What do you mean? How am I to blame? I am ready to believe whatever you tell me as soon as I understand what it means. Notice, I will believe when I what? What does he mean by understand?
See it.
See it? What else? Know. I will believe when I what? When I know. Okay? Any of you have read Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find? Fantastic short story. Okay? In it is a character called the Misfit, a murderer who's escaped from the Georgia State Pen, Florida State Pen. Okay? And he has a scene towards the end of the short story where he's talking with an old woman, and he's talking about faith. And she says, Jesus, just pray to Jesus. And he goes, yes, Jesus throwing everything off balance. And she's going, what? And he said, Jesus brought people back from the dead. Jesus wrote, Jesus oughtn't have done that. Why? Because I wasn't there to see it for myself. If I'd have been there, he says, then I'd have known. Did he really come back from the dead, or did he not? And if I'd have known, maybe I wouldn't be the person I am now. What's he getting at? He's getting at, I can't believe. I won't believe. Okay? What's it take for one of the disciples? To believe. Takes him to see. Thomas says, until I see the hole in his side and feel the prints, the nail holes in his hand, I will not believe. And Jesus, taps him on the shoulder. Come on, Tom. Okay? It's the same idea. He says, I'm ready to believe once I understand. Well, if you'd accepted our invitation, you would have known the right way. What was the invitation? Sleep. Go to sleep. When a man will not act where he is, he must go far to find his work. He says, I have gone far, and I got nowhere. For I have not found my work. I left the children to learn how to serve them, and have only learned the danger they are in. When you were with them, you were where you could help them. You left your work to look for it. What? What point is MacDonald trying to get at there? Yeah, I have to be careful how I express this. The world has an awful lot of quote-unquote do-gooders in it. How do they often, not always, often, try to quote-unquote do good? Where do they look for the opportunity to do good? Less fortunate people. Where? Farther away. You want to do good? Do it where? Where you live. Okay? Might be literally where you live. Where else might it be? On your way to school. On your way to work. You see a homeless person with a sign. Hungry. What could you do? I think this is what MacDonald's getting at. You could stop and give the person $5. Now, some people will argue, an awful lot of quote-unquote, I'm putting this in quotations intentionally, Christians will say, oh, but you can't give them money because they might be drunks. They might be alcoholics. They might be drug addicts. And what are you doing then? Judging. You are judging them. You are enabling them. You're feeding their habit. You're feeding their alcoholism, etc. Right? In making that assessment, or let's use your word, judgment, what are you denying that individual? Whoever that is. Choice. You're denying that individual's choice. You are saying, I know what's best for you. Therefore, I'm not giving you this $5 that will enable you to go down to McDonald's and get a Big Mac or something that will stop those hunger pangs you might have right now. Why? Because I fear you might be an alcoholic and you're going to use that $5 to what? Go buy a single beer? Because you're not going to buy a fifth of scotch, with $5. Okay? So, you did what? You knew what your work was, and what did you do? You went somewhere else to try to do it. It takes a wise man to know when to go away. A fool may learn to go back at once. He says, so you're saying I could have done something by staying with them. Could you teach them anything by leaving them? What did the little ones learn by your leaving? And he goes on. What did they learn by his staying? What did he do when the bad giants captured him? He served them. Completely acquiesced. What could he have done? Because he knew. What about the bad giants? They were weak. They were pushovers. They were stupid. Okay? He could have cast off his shackles and done what? Enslaved, we are told, the bad giants to the little ones. Wait, I thought all slavery was bad. MacDonald was saying, no, it's not. Because what would the slavery have taught the bad giants? Love, okay, that you might have to argue that one a little bit. What else possibly? If you're enslaved to somebody, what are you doing for them or to them? You are serving them. Maybe not willfully, but what can one learn from forced service? Humility? Do the bad giants have any humility? No, they don't. Do they understand the value of any kind of service? Any kind? No, they don't. Okay? He could have taught them those two lessons. So, they go on, they talk about the water, they talk about the bad giants. Page 142, Mr. Raven says, just before the chapter of the Persian cat, when Vane says, at least it was for love of them, not from cowardice, that I served the giants. That is, love for the little ones. He says, granted. Okay, I'll give you that little point. You have a little bit of skin on your face for that. But you ought to have served the little ones, not the giants. You ought to have given the little ones water, then they would soon have taught the giants their true position. In the meantime, you could yourself have made the giants cut down 2/3 of their coarse fruit trees to do what? Give room to the delicate little ones. You lost your chance with the lovers, Mr. Vane. You, what? Speculated about them instead of helping them. You thought about them. It's like when, you have something horrible happen. A member of a family dies, or, a colleague's loved one dies, or something like that. And someone says, oh, I'm thinking of you. Well, what the frick does that do for them?
No.
It doesn't do any good. Okay, it might make you feel better for a moment. Oh, somebody's thinking of me. What do you really need? Or even worse, you find out someone has cancer and they can't cook anymore. I'm thinking of you. What would be a lot better? Bring them a meal. Or somebody's got a broken leg, can't get around. Give them a ride. Okay, those are both what? Very practical, down. This is part of what MacDonald's getting at here. This idea of practical service. Not just thinking about doing something, but doing something. Okay? What did Mr. Vane told he must do early on? Okay? After that. How does he do that? By doing something. Has he done anything really yet? Okay? So, we have the thing with the Persian cat. The Persian cat is Lilith. She gets captured, right? And Adam tries to talk her into repentance. She doesn't buy it. They go up to the mirror to go through. She gets through first. Got 5 minutes. Page 52 and 53. He tells, 153, Adams, Raven, tells Mr. Vane, top of 153, you will sleep tonight at my hostelry. He says, yeah, but my heart's with the children. I've got to go warn the children. Why? Because she's back now. She overheard our conversation. She knows what? What about them? That they're the children from the people of Bulika, okay, where they live, and more importantly, who is there with the children? Her daughter. Her daughter, who, according to a prophecy, will be her undoing. Or, another way the prophecy puts it, page 148 towards the bottom, even Lilith shall be saved by her childbearing. In other words, her daughter is going to be the salvation for her. Okay? So, he gives Mr. Vane the horse, and what does he do? Rides to the children. Rather than riding to Adam's cottage and going to sleep. Right? Notice, he's doing something. He's just doing the wrong something. And Adam says, 158, about a third of the way down, go then, foolish boy, with anger in his croak. Take the horse, ride to failure, may it be to humility. Right? He's been told what he needs to do. He doesn't do that. He's got better ideas, he says. Okay? So he goes off to the lovers. He talks with Lona, big long conversation, and they get prepared to do what? They're going to storm Bulika. Why? What's the purpose for going to the city? Take it over? Are they going to cleanse it? Are they going to find all their mothers? What are they going to do to the princess? Let her rule them? Capture her? Kill her? Okay. So they go off to the city in chapter Roman numeral 36. I know we've only got a couple minutes left. Page 182. First paragraph. From about the second half of the paragraph on. If we retreated, it was certain the princess would not leave us unassailed. If we encountered her, the hope of the prophecy went with us. He's thinking the prophecy is the daughter will overcome the mother. Well, here's Lona. She'll win. Mother and daughter must meet. It might be that Lona's loveliness would take Lilith's heart by storm. Mother would see her and go, oh, honey, I'm so sorry I threw you away. Kind of a, If she threatened violence, I would be there to stand. I'll protect Lona. If I found that I had no other power over her, I was ready for the sake of my Lona to strike her pitilessly on the closed hand. I knew she was doomed. Most likely it was decreed that her doom, notice, should now be brought to pass through us. What is that? Sheer speculation. He's already speculated before and not acted. Okay? What happens? Let's cut to the chase. Lona dies. That's a nice passive way of putting it. Lilith kills her. Okay? Mother, mother! She flings her arms around the princess, page 184. An instant more, and I should have reached him. In that instant, I saw Lona lifted high. She runs to her mother, and her mother picks her way up in the air and smashes her down on the marble floor, killing her. Not instantly. She's still alive long enough for on the next page to go, "Mother, mother," and then dies. And he picks her up and carries her out into the court. All right? Page 186, and we'll stop with this. Just before the chapter, The Shadow. I walked on in front and out of the city. He's leading the little children. He's carrying Lona's lifeless body. What an end to the hopes with which I entered the evil place. Well, what were those hopes? Go back for just a moment to 172. They are these. Lona should take her seat on the throne that had been her mother's, and it would be natural she should make of me her consort and minister. Consort? Husband. Lona would take her place as what? Ruler. And I would be what? Her husband. In other words, co-ruler without the responsibility. For me, I would spend my life in her service. Between us, what might we not do? How might we not rule this, place? Those are the hopes with which I entered the evil place. We had captured the bad princess and lost our all-beloved queen. Well, that was a fair exchange, right? They captured Lilith. Okay, so Lona dies. Well, collateral damage. My life was bare. My heart was empty. All right, we'll stop there. We'll finish this on Friday. We'll have a quiz over the whole thing on Friday. None of the other books, well, I'll take that back. Most of the other books won't be this detailed in terms of the analysis.